Hey everybody, oops, wrong button. There I am. Oh, OBS Studio. But hey everybody, my name is Alex Merced from AlexMercedCoder.dev, and this is going to be my browser events masterclass, all about, just working with JavaScript events in the browser and the little nuances of it, the event object, all that fun stuff. Just a reminder to subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, leave a comment afterwards if you have anything you would like to say or ask. But also make sure to subscribe to my two podcasts, Web Dev 101 and Data Nation, where you can learn either about web development concepts, like you can go all the way back to episode 1 and just kind of see like a nice progression of like just conceptual web development ideas, and same thing for like in the data engineering world with the Data Nation podcast. And of course, follow me on Twitter at AlexMercedCoder. But here we go, let's begin. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I am going to create a new HTML file. So we'll just call this events.html. I'll put some HTML boilerplate. And let's open this up in the browser. Open with live server. Okay, just try to bring that browser over to this window. Oh, multiple screens. Okay, so we got that. Let me just close this whole browser window over here. Okay, and let me just organize these windows. There we go. Thank you, Pop! OS, for your amazing tiling windows. Okay, so bottom line is like events, like when you're using DOM manipulation in JavaScript, and if you don't know what DOM manipulation is, you should then go check out my DOM manipulation videos first. Whether we're talking about plain vanilla DOM manipulation or jQuery, you should kind of get how to do that first before you're kind of watching this video and exploring events. But essentially what happens is like anything that happens on the screen, like HTML is just going to determine what's on the screen. So I can say, hey, there's a button that says cheese on the screen. See, like there's a button called cheese. But what happens when I click on the button? Okay, I mean, you can do some basic stuff from HTML because you can actually do this. I can type in on click, meaning when, and then I can technically type JavaScript in this quotation marks, and that will run when you click that button. So I could do something like alert hello. Like you can do that and this will work. See, and that works. But generally that's not the way you're going to do it. Okay? Generally what's going to happen is that you're going to write that JavaScript that responds to that event in your JavaScript. So let me show you an example of how you would do that. So let me write a script tag here. So we can write some JavaScript right here in the HTML file. So generally what's going to happen is that first I would go grab that button from the DOM. So I would just create a variable const button equals document.querySelector. And then I'm going to grab the button by highlighting its element. So that's going to go grab the node from the DOM and save it in this variable. So I can now do things with the button. Okay, and then the button, which is a DOM node, has a couple different ways that I can define that same click event. Okay, one way you can do it is that there's actually a property on the node for every possible event. Okay, and let's just show you that. So it's console.dir, and the reason I'm doing console.dir instead of console.log is that this will allow me to see all the, I'll just show you the difference. So you can just see what happens if I do both. So if I console.log the button versus if I console.dir the button. Okay, let's open up the console. So I'm going to hit inspect, open up the console, and you see when I console.log a DOM node, like just the way the browser is set up, it's going to show you the HTML element. It shows you just like this live view of the HTML element, so it actually changes as it changes real time, which is kind of neat. But I don't want to see that. I actually want to see the node as an object, as a JavaScript object. So the dir version will show me, see like this, there's the button, and I can actually see all the properties in that object. Okay, and basically what happens if we scroll all the way down to the O's, see there's an actual property for like every possible event: on drag, on double click, on cut, on queue change, on copy. So I could do this. I could say button.onClick, so I'm going to assign a function to the onClick property of the node. Okay, so I'll assign a function, and then in that function we'll just say alert hello. And what's going to happen is that if I click on the button now, this function will run because that's now stored. Like if I go over here and I look at this and I head over to the onClick property, onClick, so you see a function's there now. So you see there's a function that's assigned to that property. Okay, so if I click on it, it works. But you know, that'd be like really frustrating to have to like keep writing onClick, and people just don't generally do it this way. And the other problem with this is you can only assign one function at a time. There actually might be reasons you might want to assign multiple click events, click handlers to the same button. So generally, the more modern way of doing it would be instead every DOM node has built into it a method called add event listener. And the way the add event listener is, you pass it what event you want to manipulate, and basically the way you know what the event is, just take off the word on. So you know how I said like on double click, on click, on cut, on all that stuff, just take off the on. So for the on click event, we take off the word on and we get the click event. So that's going to be the first argument, the string click. So it's a string that represents which event you're registering this event for. So you're saying, hey, when this event happens on this node, on this DOM node, I want the following function to happen. And the second argument would be the function you want to happen. Okay, so there's the function. Let me just give myself some more space. There we go. Okay, so in this function. And, you know, we can, again, alert hello. Just keep doing the same thing we've been doing. And if I click on it, see, it works. When I click on the button, this function runs. And what does the function do? It puts out an alert box that says hello. Yay, that's pretty cool. Okay, so that's essentially how events work. Basically, you can just take a bajillion different types of events. Like again, I could change this to double click, DBL click. And if I click this once, see, it doesn't do anything. I got to double click it, meaning I got two clicks really quick. And then I get the hello. So there's a lot of cool events you can. And again, the way, how would I know all the different events? I could Google it. I could also inspect the node in the console log or console.dir the node and scroll down to the O's and take a look at the list. Okay, on drop, on drag start, and I can then Google like what these different events mean. Majority of these you'll never use, or rarely really. They're really like, they have a possible event for like almost everything you can do in the browser, and it's going to be mostly used when you're building out like more robust applications. Like think of like a Google Docs, like where you use a lot of keyboard shortcuts. There's a lot more going on than your typical like website or typical web application. Mostly your typical web application, you're talking about like clicking, maybe some keystrokes, and form submissions, which is what we're going to focus on here. Okay, but another cool thing is that, you know, what if I wanted to do something like, well, let's just show you something. What happens is that whenever an event occurs, it doesn't matter if it's a click event, a double click event, or literally any kind of event happens, what happens is that the browser is going to generate an object of data called the event. Okay, it's the event object. It has a bunch of data that you could use. There's no way to memorize all the data that's in that thing. It's a huge thing. There's a few that you'll generally remember after much use. But the idea is that the function that you pass as the event handler, that's what we refer to. Basically, this is the event, and this is the function that handles the event. So that function is referred to as the event handler. So you oftentimes see that word handle in relation to the function that responds to an event or responds to a thing. Okay, so in the sense like in the back end, when you write routes, your controller functions can also sometimes be referred to as route handlers. They handle when a certain route is requested. So always like it handles a situation. So this function is an event handler. It handles the double click event right now. But this function is going to get past that event object. Right now I have no parameters defined to receive it. Now I'm going to type in the word event. It doesn't really matter what this is. This could be anything. What a lot of people do is we'll just do E because it's just a lot less typing. But I'm going to do event so that it's very clear that this variable holds the event object. And let's console.log the event object, because that gets generated when the event happens and it gives you information about the event. Okay, so like for example, if I double click and see this event get generated, and I see it's a type of a mouse event, and I can then open up the object, and there's all these information. So you see like this is property that says alt key. That just means like, was I holding the Alt key when I clicked? So now if I hold the Alt key, so right now it says false. Now if I hold the Alt key and double click on this again, okay, now a new event has been logged. So now let me open up that one and see in this one the Alt key is true because I was holding the Alt key when I double click that. So if I wanted to do something like for example, we'll do this, like if event.altkey, if that's true, then console alert, you are holding the Alt key. Okay, so let's see what happens. Like right now I'm not holding the Alt key, so I'll put my hand up. I'm not holding the Alt key and I double click and see I just get the log of the event. Why? Because I logged the event. This if statement doesn't run because that's not true. Alt key is, I can see in the event object that the Alt key property is false. Now let me hold the Alt key and I double click and see now I get the event because this time it's true. So you can use the information in the event object for lots of different things. So like for example, you have like over here that shows you like the coordinates of where on the screen you're clicking, which you can use like you say if you click in a particular spot, you do a particular thing. Again, there's a lot of stuff. You're not going to memorize all of these. A couple other ones that are pretty important to remember is like target. So let's take a look at target. Event.target. TTTQRST. Here you go, target. Okay, and target's generally going to be the thing that you clicked on. Okay, so this console.log event.target. Okay, so let me double click. Oh, I put that console log in the if statement. Boop. Let's console.log event.target. And you see the target is the button because that is the thing that I clicked on, which is really useful. Okay, for example, in a situation, let's say I have lots of buttons. Okay, so let me go add a whole bunch of buttons to the DOM. Okay, so we're going to add another one, button, good, button, bad. Okay, so I have all these buttons. Now what I'm going to do, I'll get rid of this. I'll leave that there. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a event listener on the window. So it's when you click on the window, and the window means literally the whole browser window. So if I click anywhere in here, I'm triggering an event. That's what I'm going to do. So the way you do that is you use the window object and you say window.add event listener. And then again, you're going to say click, and then you pass in a function. I need the event object, but again, you can give it, you don't have to call it event. I'm going to call it E this time, so you can see like different ways that people do it. E for event, and I'm going to say I want to alert the event target, whatever node I clicked on, I want to alert the inner text of that. So the idea is if I click on the cheese button, cheese should be alerted. If I click on good, good should be alerted. Okay, so let's try that out. Cheese. Good. Bad. Okay, why? Because that is a target. Okay, now let's do something else. Console.log. There's something called, in the event object, there's a current target. Console.log. And then there's target. So just to show you like the difference. So if I click on good, okay, so you can see here the two console logs. So see, the current target is the window, not the thing I clicked on. So basically the current target always is the node that actually has the event listener registered to it. So in this case, the event is registered with the window. So the window object is the current target. But I clicked on the button, so the button is the target. And the reason why that's important is because there are going to be times where you might have something like this, where you register the event listener on a div that might affect things, but you can click on different things inside the div. So sometimes you might want to like manipulate the div, and other times you want to manipulate the things that they clicked on. And just so you know, okay, target's the thing I clicked on. Current target is the thing that owns the event. Okay, So this way, you know if you need to do something with that node, you know how to do that. And then I can go access that node, go grab data from it, or access any of the things that are in that particular like object. Okay, and again, the window object has a whole bunch of its own properties as well. Okay, but again, the window represents the whole screen, while, again, button just represented the button node because I grabbed the button earlier. Okay, cool. A couple other cool things that are inside the event object is there's a function called stop propagation. That's going to prevent bubbling, which is just when a child element triggers an event is triggered on a child that also triggers an event on the parent. So if I have like a div inside of a div and the inner div is clicked on, but the inner div and the outer div both have a click event, they would both be triggered. So you'd end up with two events happening. If you don't want that to happen, what you would do is you would run this function event.stop propagation. And what this would do is that if you trigger a function, this would prevent the function from bubbling after that the child. So the child's event would happen, but the parent would not have an event triggered. So that's what's referred to as bubbling, and this allows you to stop bubbling. Okay, there's also a thing called it's called prevent default. Okay, so it generally prevents a default behavior of something. So for like a submit event on, basically there's two really main reasons you would use prevent default. Okay, and the way that looks like is like e.prevent default. You would use it on the submit event in a form to prevent the page from refreshing every time you click submit on a form, and for when you click on an A tag. Okay, if you click on an A tag, a link, it's naturally going to try to refresh the page because it thinks it's taking you to another web page. So if you don't want to prevent that from happening, you would then use prevent default. So you just say stop.prevent event.prevent default in the event that handles the clicking on the A tag. Okay, so I will show you an example. So let's go back over here. Let's create an A tag. A href equals empty hello. Okay, now if I click on this, oh, okay, so I still have that window event, so it works. But let me just comment this window event out for a moment. Yep, doesn't like that because it thinks it's HTML. I'm just gonna get rid of the. Okay, bye. I will just do this. Do this the hard way. Okay, cool. But if I click on hello, you see, like, if you take a look up here, it looks like it's trying to take me to another page. So see the page refreshes. I don't want that to happen. So what I can do is I can go grab that A element. So I can be like const A equals document dot query selector and grab that A element. Okay, so we have the A element in here. So we'll create an event that says like A dot add event listener, and we say, hey, when you click on the A tag, click, and then we'll write the function. I'll use an arrow function this time, just so you can see like a variety of how you can do the same thing. And then in here, we need to declare the event. And then we can say e.prevent default. And you'll see now going forward, when I click on this, see the page doesn't refresh. So now if I do a console.log here, hello. See, the console log actually stays in the console. Okay, now if I took that out, like if I commented out the prevent default, that hello does not stay in the console because the page refreshes each time I click on it. See, you can kind of see the hello for a second, then it immediately disappears. Okay, it's the same deal with like a form. So, for example, if I had a form, then let's just put like a submit button in here, input type equals submit. type equals submit. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so then what happens here if I let's actually just do this. Let's first create the event. So let's just go get the form. And again, the submit event is on the form element. So I don't need to get the input. So even though technically this is the submit button is the input element, the event, the thing I need to target is this, the form. Okay, so keep that in mind. So I'm going to do that. So I'm going to say const form. I'm going to have a variable for my form. I'm going to go grab it from the DOM, document.query selector, and then I'm going to select the form. And then I'm going to say form.add event listener. Again, if you click, if you submit the form, okay, so that's clicking on that submit button inside that submit button inside of a form element triggers an event called submit, not a click event. Okay, so I hit submit. Then again, we have our function. Actually, I'm going to use the function keyword just to kind of point something else out while we're here. Okay, now again, I have to declare the event object. And then from there, what we can do is we'll console.log hello again. So theoretically, now when I hit submit, this should console log hello. So look at the console and see the page refreshes again. Hello does log, because you can see it for like a millisecond, but it refreshes the page because that's what a form does by default. So again, forms and a tags are where you have this problem, but again, I can fix that by just putting in event.prevent default, and then it'll prevent that from happening. So now if I hit submit, see, I just get a normal console log of hello. Okay, pretty neat. Okay, now the other thing I want to point out is that technically if I'm using the function keyword, so again, you saw that I could use an arrow function, I could use the function keyword. If I use the function keyword, not with an arrow function, because this keyword doesn't really work in arrow functions. At least that's the easiest way to think about it. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but console.log, if I console.log this, let's see what this is. It's the form, okay, because the submit event is on the form. So essentially what happens is that when the event gets triggered, it's the thing that owns the event, the current target, that actually calls the function. Okay, and if you know about how this works in JavaScript, it's the object that calls the function that acts as this. So just so you know, this is something you can take advantage of. I mean, you can get to the same place by just doing event.currentTarget, like, you don't. So if you were to use an arrow function, there's another way to get to the same place, event.currentTarget versus this, but you could use this. Okay, and this would refer to the thing that just triggered this function. Okay, which in this case is the form, because this event is on the form. So the form just called this function, and I can log things about the form. Okay, so I can go in here, and if I would change this to console.dir, so that way we can see like what's inside of a form, because a form has some really cool properties. Submit, let's take a look at a form, because a form node does have some unique things. So you see it has like an array of its inputs. So like the first input in there is 0. So if I had multiple inputs in there, I'd be able to access them kind of like an array. So I can like console log like 0. If I do that, see the input is the first thing. So I could actually like loop through the array's inputs and grab the values of the different items in the form. So there are some niceties to using a form element versus just having a bunch of inputs not in a form element. Because a lot of people will avoid using the form element so that way they don't have to think about prevent default. But there's two reasons you don't want to do that. One, there are some niceties with a form. And two, accessibility. Like screen readers aren't going to be able to understand what's going on your website, like understand that this is a form if you don't have that form tag in there. So you do want to use that. Cool, but I mean, that's the basic idea of events. Like there's a bajillion types of events, key up events, key down events. Like you can, we can go forever on all the types of events that exist. Like if you want to do like hover stuff, like this would be like these on pointer events. So on pointer enter would just mean like the mouse enters the area for that element. But if you want something to happen when the mouse leaves that area, so then it would be on pointer leave. Okay. Actually, that'd be on mouse enter, on mouse leave. I forget what's the distinction between on pointer, on mouse. I have to read up on that. But like, there's certain things that have like play and pause, like audio elements that you can take advantage of, like create events for when you like play on them. There's events for all sorts of things. I'm trying to look for some good ones. There's the on submit event. We just talked about that. The keyboard events are all in the key range. So on key, here we go. On key up, a key down, a key press. So it's really key down and key up. So if you want to trigger an event when they push a keyboard key, it would be on key down. And then you would use information from the event object to determine, if you wanted to do like an if statement, like, hey, if they push the A button, then do this. If they push the B button, then do this. And then key up would be if they let go of the key. On input, this is used for inputs. So for example, if I typed in an input box and I unfocus, that would trigger that. Well, this would be if I type into an input box. And then there's an on change that happens after you unfocus an input box, although that's treated differently in React. So keep that in mind. They're not the same. The way it works in React, if you use React later on, and the way it works here is different. Basically in React, this works like on input does down there. And let's demonstrate that. Let's show you the difference. Okay, let's create another input. Input type equals text. Okay, so see now that we have our text input. So now I want to go grab that input and create an event on it. Const input equals document dot query selector. And I don't want to grab any input because there's two inputs, the submit button and the input box. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to target the element that has a type that equals text, because that would be the text input. So that's how I'm going to grab that. Okay, and then we're going to create two events. Input dot add event listener. We're going to have one that happens when the input changes, so on change. And all this function is going to do is just console.log the word change. And then we'll have another one for input. And actually, I'll make one more there's an on focus event for when you focus the input. Okay, so focus should be triggered when I highlight the input box. So like watch what happens when I click on the input box. See, the focus event triggered. You can see the console log in the console. So you see how it has a thick border on it? That's me calling the input into focus. Generally, I can have one input in focus at a time. So I could trigger an event there. I can say, hey, whenever you focus on this input, do this. Because maybe you want to do like a validation. I think there's also one where you go out of focus. We'll take a look at that in a second. Now watch what happens when I type a letter, like one single letter, A. So you see input got logged. So anytime I type, see input is happening. Now when I unfocus, the change gets triggered, because basically what happens is that I have typed in there, and then what it does, it's basically saying, okay, this has changed since the last time you unfocused. Okay, so that way you can kind of see like when these events trigger. And that's like the best way to explore, like play with these and just have them like to get a feel for like when they occur and stuff like that. But that is essentially browser events in a nutshell. Let me just call your attention to some other resources. So if you head over to my blog, grokoverflow.com, what you can do, head over to the blog section. So here you can also find lots of lists of podcasts to listen to on web development, on my video playlists. You can join the Slack community. But over here on my blog, if you look up events, so if I just hit search, okay, there's an article I have on JavaScript events that also shows you some really cool stuff. Like one that shows you how to use the built-in events. So it's the stuff we just covered during this video. But also you are able to build your own custom events. So for some reason you want to like trigger this. I mean, you probably, I would say 90% of the time, don't need to create custom events, because this would generally be if you created some sort of object that's going to do a thing, and you want other things to be able to respond when that object does a thing. That's generally when you create custom events. Okay, but if you want to learn how to do that, I have all that documentation here. And as far as how events work in Node, that is also here. So that way you can also see how events would work in Node. So hopefully you guys check that out. And again, there's a lot of other really good articles over here at Grok Overflow that I've written over the years. So do check it out and do join the Slack community as well. But otherwise, again, hit like, subscribe, leave a comment. I'll see you all in the next one. Have a great one and enjoy.